this video, I just wanted to share some tips for skip casting from a kayak. Now, first things first, what you want to make sure of is that you don't have anything in your way. You know, when you're casting from a kayak, especially skip casting, you can't really do it with the rod tip down to the water. You have to sort of sidearm it from the side. So make sure there is nothing in front of you or to the side of you or behind you on the side that you're going to be, you know, swinging your rod back and casting from. Now I'm going to use this tree as an example right here to skip cast underneath. And what I'd like to do is have the kayak positioned parallel or slightly out to an angle of the spot that I'm trying to skip cast to. So when I cast, I hold the rod in my right hand, my left hand reels. So I'm going to swing back to my right side. So I want whatever I'm casting to be out to my left side. And also, when you go to cast, some people will just rear back and swing it. What I like to do is do a circle with the lure. So as soon as that lure comes down to the bottom of that circle, that's when I'm going to let go of my line, keep that lure close to the surface of the water, and let it rip. That's the key, is keeping it close to the surface of the water and going at a good speed. So we'll go ahead. I'm not going to cast to that tree yet, just going to show you this technique where you circle around. And as you can see, that lure skipped nicely on the surface of the water. So just to show you one more time, loop it around, release as it's at that bottom half of the circle close to the surface of the water. And make sure you snap that rod tip. You don't just want to lob it. You need to snap it and send that lure to your target zone. Now, another reason why I like to do sort of that loop or that circle sort of cast with the lure is because you don't have to rear back as much. You know, you could just do a fast, quick loop, swing that lure underneath your target zone, and you don't have to rear back too far, especially if you may have a shoreline to your side or something like that, some trees, and you can't bring the rod too far back. Now, if you have enough room, you don't have to do that loop cast. You can sort of just swing back, keep that lure close to the surface, same thing, and then start retrieving. So again, the main focus when you're, you know, skip casting from a kayak as opposed to a boat is you don't have as much room. You know, you can't turn around. Some kayaks you can completely turn around in them if they're stable enough, but you want to have your target to the opposite side of the side you cast from. So again, I cast with my right hand, rod is in my right hand. If I'm casting to my left, I want whatever I'm casting to be to my side, so I can rear up, swing that lure in, and skip it through or skip it under. Now, if you're sitting down, this could be a little bit more difficult. I highly recommend going with a shorter rod. You know, the rod that I have now is actually a 7'10", and when you're sitting down, you're lower to the surface of the water, so you're going to need some more clearance. So I would recommend going with a 6 foot, if not a 6.5 foot rod. That way you don't have to worry about hitting the, you know, the water with your rod tip or anything like that. And also, if you have a rod holder up in front of you, highly recommend getting that out of the way. You can sort of just push it down or take it off while you're fishing. And same thing, have your target to the opposite side that you swing back on, and keep that lure close to the surface of the water. Sometimes sitting down can actually be more ideal because you can get a lower cast as opposed to standing up. So just to give an example here, I like to do, again, that circle. When that lure reaches the bottom half of that circle, you release, skip it across the water, like so. Now, skip casting takes quite a bit of practice, so if you don't get it the first time, just keep practicing and you'll start getting the hang of it, especially if you're using different rods. I try to use the same rod for whatever I'm doing with skip casting. You know, if you start switching rods, it's going to change your technique a little bit and you may screw up some casts. So if you do have one rod that you can dedicate to skip casting, I would highly recommend that. Now, one last tip: when skip casting from a kayak, you may want to shorten your leader, or if you use an FG knot, you know, you can reel your line up close to the lure, and that'll make it a little bit easier to skip cast that lure as opposed to having a bunch of line out like so. But again, once you get used to a certain way of doing it, you'll pretty much get better at it as opposed to trying something different. So what I do, you know, if the leader is a little bit too long, I'll bring it up into the guides a little bit. Again, that FG knot helps when keeping that line from getting stuck in the guides, and just do that loop cast, circle cast, skip it close to the surface. Now, one of my favorite lures to use for skip casting is going to be a 5-inch soft plastic jerk shad. These stick bait style lures that, you know, don't have a paddle tail are great for skipping, because if you're using a paddle tail or something like that, most times, you know, the tail will catch the water and your lure will just come to a dead stop. When you're using something like this, it skips really nicely, and I like to rig them on weedless wide gap hooks. This is an owner twist lock hook, anything from, you know, 1/16 ounce to a 1/8 ounce. Keeps it nice and weedless, especially if you're casting up to structure and trees and anything like that. I don't like using jig heads too much, especially if they're heavier, because they tend to catch the water as you're skipping it and will just, again, come to a dead stop. So choose your lures wisely. Again, really comes down to personal preference. Some people like to use shrimp imitations, skip those close to the trees or under structure, but in my opinion, again, any type of stick bait style lure that doesn't have a paddle tail or anything like that, such as a shrimp or a plastic jerk shad, can work really well. So that will wrap up this video on skip casting lures from a kayak. If you have any questions or comments or any additional tips you would like to share, definitely leave those down below. Also, if you want to catch more fish in less time, definitely be sure to check out our Salt Strong Insider Club, where we guarantee you'll start catching more fish in less time. So definitely be sure to check that out. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.